and I want to welcome you to America's Mayor Live. And tonight is a show that I hope you heard about, because we're going to share with you something known as the FBI FD 1023. I don't think too many people ever get to see one of these unless you were an FBI agent, an assistant U.S. attorney, a defense lawyer. Most people don't have contact with this kind of thing. Let me tell you what it is, first of all. This is a report on a, it's not classified, but a very, very usually sensitive subject, and something that really has to be known by the director. Something of this nature, I'm going to assume, unless someone can prove otherwise, was also shared with the Attorney General. Because of that, when we go through it, you'll see the nature of it. It would be almost impossible that it wasn't shared with the Attorney General. I don't know how I feel about this. I was on my friend Steve Bannon's show earlier tonight, and I told, and Steve, said this is even more vindication and that of the positions that I took very, very early. There are a whole mix of feelings. Like, I don't know why I had to be vindicated. I never lied in my life, and all of a sudden I'm being attacked as a liar and a Russian agent. And from the very beginning, I just tried to share with the American people what I had learned to prevent. Not so. Well, first I gathered it to defend my client because it had to do with Ukrainian collusion. Because I knew that their original charge wasn't just false; it was false and fictitious. And then I found out it was made up by them, and they paid them. You realize what kind of criminal you have to be to do that? Do you realize how bad you have to be to go get a false report of all kinds of salacious conduct that's not true, allege that Donald Trump was an agent of Russia for 10 years, which is what it said, that he urinated in a bed once slept in by Obama, and that and basically that he was an active agent of the Russian government, which by the time he got into being president, they were accusing him of treason. And from the very beginning, they all knew it was untrue. There's even a conversation in the White House during the election in which Brennan originally tells the president of the United States about this, and he allows it to go on knowingly, as does the vice president, now the president. So the idea of, number one, using the false charges to stop him, and then using the false charges to remove him as the lawfully elected president, sat perfectly fine with a dishonorable man like Obama. Oh, I know you find that difficult to hear, but he is. He's not a prince, far from it. And the other guy, Biden, is just simply, and it will turn out in our history books, by far the most corrupt president in the history of this country, and has done grave damage to this country, maybe more than any other American president. Well, I first brought this evidence out to the American people. Could be late January, but certainly by February of 2019. Now think about that. That was way, way before the election. I got it out. I was accused of trying to interfere in the election, 2019. When I brought it out originally, it was anybody's guess if Biden was going to run. And frankly, I didn't consider him the strongest candidate to start with. He looked like a bumbling fool to me, and I've known him for 35 years. And even without being a bumbling fool from dementia, he's one of the dumbest men I ever met. Didn't know he was the crookedest man I ever met, but one of the most evil, given the way he deals with his granddaughter. He's a really bad guy. Wow, much worse than I thought. So I revealed all this evidence about his bribery, how he was bribed in order to fix the case for a oligarch, organized criminal, suspected murderer named Mykola Zlochevsky, who had built his business Burisma by while he was the what we would consider the Secretary of Energy. I think they call it ecology there. And he did it during the corrupt government that had been deposed. And he was a pro-Russian. Let's say he was part of the pro-Russian Ukrainian faction, the pro-Putin, as opposed to the Ukrainian nationalists. During the time he was there, he took all the best oil and gas properties for Burisma, put it in Burisma. He had moved Burisma to Cyprus. He was working with a gentleman named Kolomoisky, who ran the Privat Bank, which was the biggest money laundering bank, certainly in Ukraine, maybe in the world. You should know that Kolomoisky is the biggest sponsor and the biggest supporter of the present president of Ukraine, Zelensky, and has been brought back out of exile by Zelensky because he was stealing so much money, he had to leave the country. Now he's back. So what happened is, when the government got overturned, Mykola Zlochevsky was very, very worried that his business was going to be seized by the new pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian government. And they began seizing parts of it in London and elsewhere. So he began getting crooked politicians to join his board. He got one from Poland. He got one from the UK. And then Obama appointed Biden as the point man controlling the money in Ukraine. And he had a perfect guy there because he had more control over Ukraine than even the president, Poroshenko. Because if he didn't approve the money, and we're talking about billions and billions of dollars of American money that went to them, they would have defaulted on their debt. So when he sees that, he makes his contacts. He knows something that every American should know. They should have known it before the election, and that is that Joe Biden is easily purchasable. He's been doing it from the day he walked into the Senate. He started as a little chiseler with a little bit of money, and then he started selling himself all over the world when he became vice president. There's no doubt about this in the minds of these people. So consider when Zelensky deals with him, Zelensky knows more about him. Zelensky's got him by the, what do they call it, the short hairs? Everything I'm about to tell you, Zelensky knows and far more. So I gathered the witnesses, tried to get them to the United States, was blocked by the crooked elements within the State Department, was targeted by the left-wing press. And they've done enormous damage to me, to my reputation, destroyed my law practice. You actually don't want to know how much money they've cost me in terms of what I used to make, what I make now, and the expenses that I've had. But I don't know what it's going to take to absolutely get them to cry uncle and say, you got him, he's a big crook. But if this doesn't do it, nothing will. It looks like a little simple piece of paper. Ted, I have it over here too. You want to show them an FD 1023?
Let's do it.
Let's show them, let them feel like junior FBI agents here. You know, they're going to restore that bureau to its early glory. I was a junior G-man when I was about 8. And then I think in 2015, I was selected by the former FBI Association. And those are all the great ones, the ones who killed the mafia, kept you safe from Russia. I was named G-Man of the Year. I have my statue around here. I showed it once. We got to get it out again. I'm very proud of that. Those men don't deserve what's being done to their legacy by crooked Comey and equally crooked Ray. So that's an FD 1023. I'm going to read you, and you might look at this because here's what I did to my copy. Now you want to look at this? And I think the people on Getter can see this as well. This is what I do when I try cases and I get ready for broadcast. I like to, I'm an underliner. I have numerous pens, different sizes to do it. You should try cases that way too.
Hold it up again, Mayor.
Okay. So I'm going to read you a condensed version of the FD 1023. Ted, can we put this on our website?
Yeah, I'll take the copy you're holding, and we'll put that.
Well, it's a 4-page.
Get your notes on there.
Except, no, you can keep this.
I want to show people your because you
I
with
f-
everything you may be the foremost expert on this.
I am. I mean,
Not might you are.
I will say this because there's so much damage been done to my reputation. I think I have a right to try to rebuild it.
Absolutely. Everything
I think
you
a very
said
good
is
argument
coming to
could
be right.
made. You would never know about any of this if it wasn't for me. There were attempts to get this out, and people gave up. I didn't give up.
And you've taken more arrows on this than anybody.
John Solomon possibly could have gotten it out. He was on the trail. There was a reporter at the Times who was, but boy, had he ever broke this story, he wouldn't have lived through it. They wouldn't have just fired him. They probably would have wasted him. And given the reaction to me with the reputation that I had, right? Nobody has the reputation for prosecution and investigation that I do. No one's done the things I've done in the area of law enforcement. Crack the mafia, put the mafia commission in jail, take over the Teamsters Union and straighten it out. Take over numerous businesses and away from. I didn't just crush them off. I took their money and businesses away, including, as I said, the Teamsters Union, with the help of Joe DeGeneva, who's taken a terrible beating because of this. It isn't just me, by the way. I don't want to be a crybaby. I'm crying for a lot of us. All of us who tried to help Trump have had the hell kicked out of us by what turns out to be either a crooked or easily compliable.
Yeah, I'm going to correct one thing you. I want to correct one thing you said, Mayor. Sorry.
The legal and the bar associations, you might as well know it, are useless. In fact, they become your enemies because they're sucking up to the establishment because that's where they make their money. You think the DC bar that is attempting to disbar me? Well, who are they? They're the Washington lawyers who make all the money off this crap that's going on in Washington. Well, this I didn't know about, well, until recently. When I say didn't know about it, I didn't know about it until after I had completed my investigation. And frankly, you don't even need this to convict him. There's so much duplicative evidence, but would I want to have it in a courtroom? Sure, of course, it's fabulous. It also is nice and easy for people to understand. So I'm going to read this. This comes from an FBI informant of the highest level, meaning one that they have a great confidence in, and one who has given them, and he wouldn't be in this category, very accurate information in very difficult circumstances. So they have no reason to disbelieve this information. And this is information that's actionable. Therefore, this would, under normal circumstances, something like this would have triggered a massive, quick investigation. What happened was this got hidden in, I don't know who originally got it, probably Ray. He hid it somewhere in his bathroom, I guess, and Barr must have hid it somewhere in his bathroom. And how they can justify not sharing this when Trump was being impeached, when the election was going on, when people like me were being accused of being Russian. Well, of course, they hid the hard drive too, right? Including Barr. Please remember the despicable, unethical things that he did, because he's such a posture. You want to talk about a guy who's sanctimonious, and what a disappointment to me. Thought he was a man of integrity. You don't hold on to this if you have integrity. It's got to be dragged out of you by the Senate and the House. Well, here it is. It begins with CHS. CHS is the initials for the high-level reliable informant. CHS was first introduced to officials at Ukraine, Burisma, by Alexander Ostapenko. And he also is referred to as Alexander Ostapenko. So we'll say CHS and Alexander Ostapenko. And during the conversation with the basically number two guy at Burisma, who was the CFO, Vadim Pozharsky, Vadim Pozharsky, the CFO of Burisma, has brought in CHS for advice on purchasing a $20 to $30 million energy company in the United States. He wants to do an IPO in the United States to buy an energy company. This is in 2015 or 2016. We don't have an exact date. This is the period of time, of course, when the election was going on, and so Biden was still in the White House as the vice president. Okay. Pozharsky told them, advised them that they should know, because it could be very sensitive, that on the board was the former president or prime minister of Poland and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Pozharsky said they hired the president or prime minister of Poland to leverage his contacts in Europe for prospective oil and gas deals. And they hired Hunter Biden to, quote, protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems. So they hired him to get his dad's protection. That's what Hunter Biden sold. There was nothing else he had to sell because he didn't know a damn thing about oil and gas or this area of the world. And as you will see, Pozharsky replied, well, basically CHS asked him, why did you do this? And he replied that Hunter Biden was not smart. Oh, and then he wanted a counsel to handle this. So they said, why don't you use Hunter Biden? And his boss, the bribe payer, the Russian oligarch, the organized criminal who certainly doesn't suffer from the problem the Bidens have of being dumb, said Hunter Biden was not smart and they needed to really get a lawyer, somebody who really was a lawyer. They had to get additional counsel because Hunter Biden was not smart. And then they had a conversation. About whether a merger would be a good business decision, and then several lawyers who could handle it, I imagine. They met again. In Vienna, and this would be within 2 months. They met again in Vienna, and present was also Ostapenko, Alexander Ostapenko, and Ostapenko and Zlochevsky met together in Vienna. They went to a coffee shop. They got on the phone, and they had a guarded conversation. And Zlochevsky brought them up to date. This is the point at which Viktor Shokin, that was being corrupt, and that he would be fired or removed from office. And that CHS told Zlochevsky, despite that, due to Shokin's investigation into Burisma, which was made public at the time, it would have a substantial negative impact on Burisma's possible IPO in the United States. And Zlochevsky replied something to the effect of, and this is CHS's words in quotes, don't worry, Hunter will take care of all those issues through his dad. Don't worry, Hunter will take care of all those issues through his dad. And then they go through a discussion of why they should buy an American company when they can start one of their own, and that he could have his trial in Ukraine and have the company cleared. And Zlochevsky said that he would likely lose a trial because he could not show that Burisma was innocent, which is another way to say that the Bidens were working for a very dirty company that was not innocent. And although they attempted to say the opposite, this is what Zlochevsky says to the informant. And then he goes on, because CHS says, gee, with a local lawyer, if you could get that straightened out, you could get this done for 50,000. And Zlochevsky laughs, and he said he's laughing because the number contained a 5, and said that it cost $5 million to pay one Biden and $5 million to pay another. So now he gives you the amount that he paid them: $5 million to pay one Biden, $5 million to pay another. And basically, CHS says that he should get rid of Biden as quick as possible. And Zlochevsky seems to agree at first. He said, but then he goes on and says, although Hunter Biden was stupid and Zlochevsky's dog was smarter, he needed to keep Biden so everything will be okay. And then CHS asked whether Hunter Biden or Joe Biden told Zlochevsky he should retain Hunter Biden. Zlochevsky said they both did. CHS says to him, I think it's a mistake not firing him. And after some other discussion, Zlochevsky answers, it's too late to change this decision. CHS understood this to mean that Zlochevsky had already paid the Bidens, presumably to deal with Shokin. Then we have another call in 2016, right after, possibly, maybe it went over into 2017, but it was right after Trump won. Zlochevsky expressed the opinion that he was very unhappy that Trump won the election, and that he really regrets it. He should have kept the advice. And he was pushed to pay them, Zlochevsky said, and that he has many text messages and recordings that show that he was coerced to make such payment to the Bidens. And then he lists, he then tells CHS in another phone call in 2019 that he really covered the funds rather carefully. He didn't send any money directly to the big guy, which everyone understood was Joe Biden. And it would take, and that he basically laundered them, which would have been done, by the way, by Zelensky's patron, Padron, Kolomoisky, who is an excellent launderer. And Zlochevsky says it'll take 10 years to find the records. No, it wouldn't. It would just take the United States Treasury Department to allow us to look at the laundered, at the offshore bank accounts, which they have, and wouldn't even allow the Ukrainian police to do it. Or it would take visiting the woman who was the accountant for Burisma and asking for the numbers, which she wants to give if they give her protection. But none of those steps were taken because we don't have a law enforcement agency any longer in the United States that protects our interests, or that protects us against a chief executive who sells our country like it's a cheap suit. So Zlochevsky then clarified that he had a total of 17 recordings. 2 of the recordings included Joe. The remaining were with Hunter. He reiterated that these recording evidence that Zlochevsky was coerced into paying the Bidens to ensure that Victor Shokin was fired, and that he has 2 documents that evidence payments to the Bidens, presumably in exchange for Shokin's firing. Now, who was this Oksana Ostapen, or Alexander Ostapenko, who originally introduced CHS to Zlochevsky? Well, right now he works in the administration of President Zelensky. So now you have it with all the other evidence that exists, which include a completed money laundering transaction on paper in which Joe is alleged to get money, the testimony the testimony of numerous witnesses that he was involved in the business, including Babalinsky, Gilliers, the devastating text from Hunter that says that I pay all the expenses of the family and I have to give half my income to Pop for 30 years, which is the core of a RICO case. With all that evidence and the 170 suspicious transactions, which corroborates how circuitous these payments were, and Biden's own confession when he said that he told the president of Ukraine, if you don't get rid of Shokin, you don't get your money. And the additional evidence that they used the excuse that Shokin was corrupt, and there's a tape-recorded conversation between Joe and Poroshenko that makes it clear that Shokin was not fired for corruption. I go on and on. You got an endless case. It's there's no way to avoid this, the conclusion that Joe Biden was bribed by Mykola Zlochevsky, sold out the office of Vice President of the United States for bare minimum, well, probably 15 to 18 million. And so far, you can't touch them. Instead, as the whistleblower said yesterday, these guys are in a world of hurt. Now, you think that either one of these two men was not telling the truth? What could that possibly be their reason for not telling the truth? These are not like the Democrat whistleblowers, political hacks who were sucking around Hillary or Biden, and loved Hillary, and nor are they particularly Trump derangement syndrome people. Gary Shapley didn't really tell us his allegiance. He said he's voted for, the way he put it, was for both G's and R's. And Joseph Ziegler said, I'm gay and a Democrat. And that seems to be the only reason why people think I might be telling the truth. And he said, that shouldn't be the reason. That's not why I'm here. I'm here basically because this was such an egregious set of crimes and obstruction that his conscience couldn't tolerate not reporting it. And we're not going to review all the testimony from yesterday, except to say that they laid out, well, let's see, from Romania, about 3.1 million. And then they had about, they accounted for about 7 or 8 million from Ukraine. They didn't have the benefit of the report that we just played, nor were they ever allowed to see the hard drive, which was totally indefensible, that you wouldn't let the investigators see the hard drive. It's like try to keep the evidence away from the investigators, because you're covering up. I do have to pause one moment to point out something that since this was my profession, since I was suspended by these crooks on completely ridiculous charges that no one in the world ever been suspended for being a lawyer, and an aggressive and good one, beating the crap out of them, which is why Biden wrote a letter right at the beginning of the campaign to keep me off television. Can you imagine being so afraid of me? You want to keep me off television? Can you imagine the arrogance of writing to the media and saying, keep me off television? I didn't know then they were in a conspiracy. When I saw that letter, I said, oh, wow. And then all of a sudden, I started to be kept off television. So Dan Goldman, who has done a pretty good job in just a year or two being there, make a big ass out of himself, did the thing that lawyers never do. And I don't know if Dan Goldman was an assistant U.S. attorney or not, but I sure as hell didn't hire him. And on this one, I'm glad I didn't. He made the mistake, as I think it's Professor Turley, who takes him to task on this, he made the mistake of asking the one too many questions. And he really is a jerk.
Break that down for us, Mayor. Why as an attorney do you not want to ask too many questions?
Well, you don't ask questions you don't know the answer to, because what can happen to you is you can get your client in a world of hurt, which he did. I mean, it's amazing.
So, of course, visit rudygiulianics.com and check out the latest podcast. There'll be a lot more, too, as the mayor breaks down what's happening and the latest on these the congressional hearings. And there's just so much happening. There's a lot happening. And, of course, the mayor watches these hearings, taking notes. It's almost as though we're studying for a final exam. The mayor takes this work very seriously, and that's why this is the best place to go to hear the latest. But of course, you can visit some of the mayor's earliest broadcasts podcasts from 3 years ago, over 3 years ago at this point, right, Mayor?
Yes.
To catch up on everything that we're now hearing. And it's interesting, right? A lot of the stuff that you guys that we're all seeing on Capitol Hill in these hearings and on the news. And this isn't meant to be a criticism. This is rather
had
3 years ago.
I'm going to read this to see if I can make it understandable. So Goldman plowed full speed ahead. He said that the references to Joe sitting next to his son do not mean that they discussed his business. Walker described the origins of the meeting with Chinese officials to get Biden to stop by. Told his dad that I be trying to start a company or try to do something with these guys. Goldman then pounced and said slyly, "Now let me ask you something. That doesn't sound much like Joe Biden was involved in whatever Hunter was doing with the CEFC. If Hunter Biden is telling him that he is trying to do business with him, does it?" That is when Shapley stated the obvious. Obviously working on a much stronger IQ. No. But it does show. He told his father that he was trying to do business. Very business that his father has denied 1,000 times he ever talked about. There isn't a person in America that hasn't heard Joe Biden say, "I never talked to my son about his business. I didn't know anything about my son's business, and I did it on purpose." So Goldman opened that up. Now, this is the same Joe Biden, that, I mean, he's actually said two different things, I should say. He said he's never discussed any of Hunter's dealings and had no knowledge of his dealings. He never discussed any of Hunter's foreign dealings and had no knowledge of his dealings. And he wanted it that way so there'd be no conflict. Even when he flew his son to China, he insists that they never talked about the deal that brought back 1.5 or 1 billion, then 1.5 billion. Well, I mean, it's clear that money was going to Joe. The one transaction where 10% was going to go to the big guy. The overarching text of Hunter to his daughter that Hunter pays for all of the expenses and has to give half his income to his father. That's paying money to his father. Bobulinski was instructed by Biden associates James Gilliard not to speak of the former Veep. Don't mention Joe being involved, which means he was involved. Don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you are face to face. I know you know, but they are paranoid. They're paranoid because they're committing crimes. Bobulinski gave testimony that he met with Joe Biden and discussed these dealings directly with him. Biden also met with 14 of Hunter's business associates from the U.S., from Mexico, from Ukraine, from China, from Kazakhstan. There's the audio tape we've played for you several times. in which Biden indicates to Hunter that he had reviewed the New York Times article and he's in the clear. The New York Times article laid out his foreign dealings with China in great detail. So how can he say he didn't know about them? And that is in his own voice. So what you basically have is, if you take the FBI document right here, the FD 1023, and the testimony yesterday from these two credible agents that the fix was in to block any possible crime against Hunter Biden. Well, now you go into the rest of it, and you have the biggest scandal in American history. And the president who's taken the most money ever as a bribe. And one who's probably lied. I don't know if he's had a day where he hasn't told a massive lie. And the end result is that the Democrats want to prosecute Donald Trump for anything they can, no matter how specious it is, no matter how extended, no matter how silly. They move documents around, that there's some non-disclosure agreement of 15 years ago. Now they're working on, he too aggressively tried to pursue the fact that there were very legitimate complaints of fraud in the election. But he wasn't allowed to do that, so we're going to put him in jail. Imagine putting your opponent who lost the election in jail because he contested the election. And now he's not only your former opponent, he's your opponent that's coming up, and he's ahead of President Biden. And he's having him prosecuted for crimes that nobody can even figure out what they are. And he's got a couple more coming up. It was ridiculous to go indict him 4 times. Something like this, usually the prosecutors get together and they agree on one jurisdiction and one crime. But these aren't. Like that letter the other day, that was all a publicity stunt. A letter and a request to testify before the grand jury when you're being told you're a target is clearly an attempt to comment on assertion of your privilege against self-incrimination, to get attention for it. It's completely unethical, and it should be the basis for a due process violation and the dismissal of that whole stinking investigation in Georgia, which is a bunch of junk. Well, we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna take some of your questions. We're gonna bring you up to date on the Gilgo Beach investigation, and we are going to give you about 3 or 4 news items that are not being covered by the crooked Biden state media, which means about 80% of it. Faith and family, freedom and finance are 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. Welcome back. if you want to make some calls, I'll make a few more remarks and then we can go to the phones. It's 1-646-573-5177. That's 1-646-573-5177. So the Gilgo case, the Gilgo Beach case, with the serial murderer charged with the death of 3 young women and a chief suspect in the 4th, and 6 others of bodies that were buried within a 1 to 1.5 mile proximity of each other on the side of the road near Gilgo Beach in Suffolk County, New York. Rex Howerman was a architect of some type in New York. He had what appeared to be both a legitimate business and a legitimate family. He had a home in Massapequa, New York. The only thing odd about the home was in this very beautiful, pristine neighborhood, it was the only one that looked like a haunted house or a shack, or, I mean, it was really broken down. But other than that, and the fact that he was very big and really very fat, he's obese, he's really about 6'6". I don't know what he weighs. They say 290. Looks to me like a lot more than that. But in any event, he's definitely clearly obese, and was described by the identification of him that goes back to 2010 when he went and picked up Amber. I think it was Amber Costello. I think it was it. It was it. Her boyfriend or pimp got a look at him and said he was 6'4" to 6'6". He was very heavy, and he looked like an ogre, which means I think we've spent enough time showing that he could have been caught back in 2012. They had 4 pieces of information that narrowed the field so much that you couldn't miss him, which is why when Rodney Harrison came in as the new police commissioner, NYPD chief, and the new district attorney was elected, together they put together a task force. They got on this guy right away. They did some really good police work between the two of them, and they caught him. And they pinned using DNA and strands of hair from his wife that was on the burlap. They were able to, and then many phone calls to girls, phone calls to sex services, weird harassing phone calls. He used burner phones and then got rid of them. And as long as he had a burner phone, like when he had the burner phone of some of the girls that he killed, he would call their family and taunt them. This is a real horror show. And all the more so because it could have been solved in 2012. Everyone knows that. But God bless Mr. Tierney, the district attorney, and Commissioner Harrison, who were able to do this and did excellent police work, and have done a very good and appropriate job of explaining it on television to people. And also the fact that they're meticulously now going to go through the other cases to see what the quality of proof is with regard to the others. The outlier of these cases is Shannon Gilbert, who ironically is the person whose death brought attention to all of this, but whose death is a debate between 2 factions as to whether she was involved in the killing of the way the other girls were. In other words, with Howerman, or she died on her own of asphyxiation, and the third possibility, she was killed by somebody else. Although that's not mentioned very often, but that could certainly be possible. Her plight is described mostly accurately, not completely, but mostly accurately in the movie Lost Girls, which you can get. Imagine a lot of people are watching it. I've watched it. Ted's watched it. Dr. Maria's watched it, and it tells you her story, and the difficult situation with her mother and her, and also how her going missing is what leads eventually to searching the marsh between the highway and the beach at Gilgo Beach. And they're finding first 4 girls right next to each other, all wrapped in burlap, and then finding a whole group of others a little further away, not wrapped in burlap, in some cases chopped up with their body parts also in other places like Manorville, New York. But about 6 of those. And then, of course, a little further away in the marsh that separates Oak Beach from Gilgo Beach, the body of Shannon was found. Shannon Gilbert, who, and again, there's a debate about this. The Suffolk County medical examiner says she died by drowning, and their family medical examiner says it was by some force and strangulation. So you can see that case has a lot of dispute involved in it and a lot of bad blood, because turns out that the commissioner, resigns, the chief ends up going to jail for 40 months, and the county executive goes to jail. Not the county executive.
Police commissioner.
Oh, the DA. The DA goes to jail, Spoda, and Spoda goes to jail for covering up for the police commissioner. And probably one of the things you can assume from this is there was something going on Oak Beach, group of private homes. That was illegal. Sounds like for sure prostitution, probably drugs, participated in by some of the very high level police and political officials of Suffolk County, which was basically all Democrat then. How to get that in, but if it were Republican, I would tell you also.
Right, Mayor, should we take our first call? It's a repeat caller. We're going to hear from our friend Lois in Minnesota, who wants to talk about Bobulinski, Mr. Bobulinski.
Okay, let me get these right. And
So,
we'll talk to Lois.
Lois in Minnesota. Where in Minnesota are you, Lois? Can you hear us? Oh, give us 2 seconds, Lois. Let me make sure.
Sure, thank you.
All right, Lois, where in Minnesota are you calling from? And you're on with the mayor.
Hello, Lois.
Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Ah, yes.
home of King George Floyd.
Yes, of course. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
We're good. We're good. A lot of things to consider and go through, but we're in good shape.
Yeah, I pray for you, Rudy.
Well, thank you. Why do you pray for me? Tell me what you
Why?
What are you worried about? Now, I'll talk to you.
Well, this whole thing is just crazy,
Oh, because
with
you
them
think they
trying to
want to put me in
disbar you.
jail? They do want to.
Yeah, I think it's just it's ridiculous.
You think there's a coincidence with the fact that I'm the one who brought out the criminality on Biden and nobody else, and they want to put me in jail?
Yeah,
And they don't even know what.
yeah, it's the same.
They don't even
Same
know.
stuff with Trump.
They don't even know what they want to put me in jail for. It's
No,
like,
they're just doing it because they can.
the FBI searched my entire house. They searched my law office, which is totally unethical. They went over my business dealings for 20 years, and then they were forced to write a letter to the grand jury that had no evidence of any crime. But now these other, either the special counsel or the DA in Atlanta, they're talking about prosecuting me really for being a lawyer. The most he could prosecute me for is that I was giving him a representation when many, many people in this country were too afraid to represent him. And that's a horrible situation.
It's
the case they're making a big deal about in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania was a case I took over with 2 days' notice because the lawyer who had the case was threatened with being thrown out of his law practice, and there was also death threats. But nobody's investigating that. And the Bar Association in New York has me suspended because I'm a threat to create a riot. And the judge in the District of Columbia dismissed me from the case, saying I had nothing to do with the riot. But that doesn't matter.
It's insane.
So then they went to look for new things. It's just absolutely crazy. And what they're doing is they are succeeding at making it very difficult for both President Trump and the people surrounding him, all of whom are, you know, being pursued one way or another, to get lawyers. His co-defendant in the first federal case, or if there was going to be a second, and it took him 6 weeks to get a lawyer. Nobody wanted to represent him. They're afraid they'll be thrown out of their law firm. They won't get other clients. They get threats. I mean, this is not America.
No. And what is the name of that organization that is trying to go after the lawyers? What is that? They're trying to disbar.
Yeah. I know the one Alan talks about. Yeah, I'll get the name for you. Yeah, they've done disbarment proceedings against a number of lawyers. I mean, a bunch of them have caved in. A bunch of the lawyers have done like an apology and sort of like that because they had to. I'd be damned.
Is this like part of Mark Elias?
It might be. I don't know. I'm going to have to find out. You know, Alan knows much more about it than I do, and I'll call Alan. He talked to me about it the other day and find out, because they're trying to disbar him too in Massachusetts, although they sent the complaint in and never did anything. And I can't describe to you
for the background on Obama and his connection to all this stuff.
Restart your question. Sorry, Lois. Can you restart the question?
Oh, sorry. Certainly. Just wondering why Obama isn't, he's connected to all this stuff, because it was all happening during his administration. So he's got to be connected to this Biden stuff too.
Yeah, I know he is. But you know, when you consider the fact that nobody's even investigated Biden and he did it, they'll never get to Obama, because if Obama is involved, he's sort of in the background. I mean, the most serious thing that has come out so far about Obama is he knew 100% that Hillary was framing Trump. He knew that she was putting together a false allegation of Russian collusion. And he sat back as president and retired president and watched a false allegation be used to depose a lawfully elected president. And he also did nothing about Biden's criminality, which had to be well known in the White House. All you had to do was read the New York Times article in 2015. If you couldn't figure out that your vice president was a crook, well, then you'd probably be the kind of president that gave money to terrorists, which is what he was. I mean, he gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Iran. So Iran uses that money to kill people. And what kind of character is that?
Can they still go back on him, or can you know? There's no statute of limitations because there's no case pending.
No.
So I mean, they can't go and start digging up on him.
They could
can't dig up anything on him.
But about the only thing you could prosecute him for, and there's no suggestion of this, would be something like murder, where there's no statute, or maybe treason, which that'd be a big step. Biden's not too far from treason with China.
Oh, no.
And it's really remarkable that the American people haven't gone crazy that he took all this money from China. It's because of the press. The press brainwashes them. But imagine, do you remember, I'm not going to ask your age, but do you remember back to the Cold War?
I'm not quite that old.
Okay.
But
you know about the Cold War, right?
I'm 66.
Okay.
I'm 66.
All right. Well, you know about the Cold War. And
yes.
So I just want to pose this question. Suppose Eisenhower, pick a Republican, or Kennedy, a Democrat, or even Reagan, who fought the Cold War. Suppose they had gotten $10 million from Russia and couldn't explain it. What do you think would have happened? I have no doubt, no matter how popular they were, and Kennedy was very popular at certain times, and Eisenhower was popular mostly, and Reagan ended up winning one of the biggest re-election victories in history. Lost only one state, and it was the home state of his opponent, Minnesota. And there's a lot of thought that maybe he won Minnesota and just decided not to contest it because he was a really exceptional guy. I think he felt sorry for Mondale. And suppose they had gotten $10 million from Russia. I have no doubt they would have gone to jail. Their own party
certainly.
their party wouldn't have defended them. The Democrats
No.
wouldn't have defended a Kennedy who took money from Russia, and the Republicans. I mean,
Okay.
Reagan was my hero, but if he took money from Russia, I'd be the first one that said he should go to jail. I mean, this is about America
Yeah.
first, and then all these people second. The reason I like Trump is because he puts America first. But if I thought
Exactly.
Trump was selling out my country, I'd be the first one online to point it out.
Yeah. Then my next question is about Bob Alinsky. Why isn't he at some of these hearings?
Because, well, I don't know why the Republicans don't call him, but I mean, he was left high and dry. The FBI interviewed him once. He told them quite clearly that Joe was involved in all of this business up to his eyeballs. They said, we'll be in touch with you. And that was 2.5 years ago. So the FBI wants no part of Bob Alinsky because he's a direct witness to Biden's criminality. The Republicans, I think, part of their strategy is to shock you or try to get attention and get through the media here with new information. For example, this report that I went over tonight. If we had a fair media, would be on the front page of every newspaper in the country. An FBI official report with an informant they trust that says that the president of the United States and his son got a $10 million bribe. That's news. That's news. And if it isn't news and you don't print it, you're not much better than the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, China, in terms of press freedom or freedom of speech. And you're covering somebody up. So it's my job to go around that and get you this information, which is what I'm going to do right this minute, because I'm going to devote, just a few minutes going into soccer time to a new feature called the major censored stories of the day. I'm just going to read them off, and then you can follow them up, or you can call, or you can text us. Did you know that immigration parole, when they send somebody out on immigration parole, like they're going to come back and decide whether they really are entitled to be in this country, 80% never show up. That means you let them in without any determination that they really were entitled to asylum, because you never had a hearing. They came in, they said, we're entitled to asylum. They said the magic words that they're taught by the cartel. They get put down for a hearing 2 years from now, and they never show up. And it is, in fact, statistically, basically demonstrated that only about 2% of them have any kind of legal entitlement. So to call them illegal immigrants is very, very accurate. The United States government has finally cut off the funding to the Wuhan lab in China. That's only about what, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years too late, and about 3 or 4 million lives too late. And I think it's clear without doubt now that we were funding against the rules of both President Obama, and they were never changed by President Trump. Behind their back, Fauci was funding it. And the reason he's hiding his royalties, which will probably amount to millions and millions, is because he was on the take from the companies producing the vaccines, which is why he wouldn't let anybody get treated, because you needed to have no treatment so you could get emergency authorization. This is all outlined brilliantly in RFK Jr.'s book, for which he is being tortured by the Democratic Party and being treated like he's a Republican. I don't think I'd ever have believed that a Democratic Party would turn on a Kennedy. And, look, I disagree with Robert Kennedy Jr. on a number of things, but there are a lot of things I agree with him on. And I never really got to know him when I was mayor, although he sued me a lot when I was the mayor, not me personally, and not the kind of cheap, legitimate lawsuits about the quality of the Hudson River where New York City can affect it. and where he didn't believe we were doing our job, and we believed that we were. And I do think we probably settled all of them, probably, somewhere in the middle. I don't think we ever went to trial, but I never really got to know him. I've talked to him a few times. I thought today he gave one of the most eloquent descriptions of what has to be done in this country of anyone. And I also tell you, my heart went out to him because I felt like in a certain way, he's going through the same thing I'm going through. He dared to take on the establishment and to point out that right on the face of it, Fauci was lying. And that this rush toward a vaccine was criminal in many ways. And they lied about it. Remember when Biden told us the vaccine would cure it? And then he said this was an endemic of the unvaccinated, when in fact the vaccinated spread the disease as much as the unvaccinated because the vaccine didn't work. And now we're dealing with suppressed evidence of a fair number of really serious side effects that would give a person pause as to whether they would take it or not. They're caught lying about natural immunity, which I knew they were lying about because I have natural immunity. My doctor told me they were lying. My doctor said, don't take the vaccine. You don't have to take the vaccine. You've got very strong antibodies. The one benefit you got from having gotten a terribly difficult case of my temperature was like 102, 103. And for an old guy like me, that's pretty damn high. And luckily I got Dr. Trump. That was my doctor, Dr. Donald J. Trump, who gave me every experimental medicine he had around. And I was cured in 2 days. I was out in 4. And for a month, I was walking around thinking I could play baseball again because one of the things they hit me with was like a massive steroid. And I can see why those ball players took steroids because the president told me, about a couple of days later, you're going to feel like you're about 20 years younger. I said, is that why you're running around like a madman? Because he always did, right? He always, look at him now. He's old, 3 years older? And he looks like he's 3 years younger.
You know what, Mayor? I'm going to say it. The same thing about you.
Well, I don't know. This microphone went out for our getter people. We don't want that to happen. Can you give me another one?
Use mine.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm sorry. So Wuhan funding cut. You're not going to read this anywhere else. That's why I'm noting these things for you. There's a great article in the New York Post yesterday that points out that the record-breaking heat was not a record-breaking heat. They give you temperatures even within the short period of time they've been keeping records. But they say things like, it was the hottest day in 125,000 years, and they only have records for about 80 years. And even with those records, oh my goodness, there were hotter days in Joliet, Illinois, in Chicago, in Lake Balaton, Hungary, Death Valley. And let's see, do I have everything now? Oh, and the last one, of course, is the anti-Semitic remarks of Pramila Jayapal, who has said that Israel, our greatest ally, the only democracy in the Middle East, is a racist country. And she also, by the way, even worse than that, supports the destruction of the state of Israel through bankrupting it. And would like to have, and all of them want Palestinians, to have their own state so we could have another terrorist state. And none of them address themselves to the following issue. And they want them to come to the United States. That'd be great. They might as well join the other terrorists here. Palestinians are still taught to kill Jews, and kill Americans, and to hate America. We're going to bring people in the United States that are taught to kill us. Hey, Pramila, go, I don't know, go chew gum. I don't even know what that means.
Well, Mayor, of course,
We are too
well
late.
into
We
soccer time.
are too late to cover RFK, I guess.
Whoa.
Tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
Or do you want to play just a little, and then we'll do the rest tomorrow?
Yeah, why don't you set the scene while I make sure this clip is
Well, yeah, you can play anyone because then we can follow up tomorrow with another one. But maybe the one in which he is asked towards the very end
censorship.
about the Democrat Party.
Yeah, we'll play that.
And he explains his disagreements with part of the Democrat Party. And I want you to realize all these people are human beings. This is a guy who lost his father as a boy. His father was bigger than life. I worked as a youngster. I'm older than him, but maybe 10 years older than him. But I was college coordinator for the Robert F. Kennedy for president, and had his father was like a hero of mine before Reagan drew me over to the other side. And really, Jay Wallman, my friend, and I can tell you the whole thing at some point. But in any event, I had great admiration for his father because he's a fighter. And I loved his approach to organized crime, and really was honored greatly when Vice President Bush, when I took over the teams, his union said that I had completed the work started by Robert Kennedy. You see, there can be bipartisan admiration. Bush admired him for that work. I'm talking about the senior Bush. I'm sure the junior Bush did too, but and there were disagreements with Bobby. I believe he became more liberal as the Vietnam War progressed. Might have become more liberal. Look, he was a politician. He wanted to get elected in 68, and the party had become pretty further left. Nothing like it. Oh my God. I take that party in a second now. Both him and the left wing of the party. And the Kennedys were always part of the moderate part of the party. Remember, John Kennedy got nominated against Adlai Stevenson, who was the left's candidate. In fact, the Roosevelts and a lot of the old liberals, left-wingers, the ones that were too terribly close to communism, opposed Jack Kennedy. So this was clearly a victory against the further left wing of the party when he got the nomination. And he never went through the transformation that Robert went through in the last maybe 2 years of his life as a senator, where he did become somewhat more liberal. Jack Kennedy you just take his record, right? You'd have to list him as a moderate for sure. Moderate right, moderate left. I don't know. On the economy, moderate right. I mean, you could, Trump says he has the biggest tax cut ever. Well, let's say he does. And then Reagan would be second and Kennedy would be third. But Reagan and Trump based it on his. He did the breakthrough with that kind of economy, with that economic thinking. They followed his lead. If you're a major tax cutter, wow, I guess you have to be in some ways considered conservative, very anti-communist too. Very, I mean, guy's got to be turning over his grave seeing what they're doing with the communists. So shall we play? Can you find that part, Ted?
We're playing it now.
So this is a question from, I think it's Congressman Massey, about the Democrat Party and how he deals with, first of all, the strange positions they take, and number two, the way they're trying to assassinate him, assassinate him politically.
Letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. This 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. The charges in this, and by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party. It was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, to Harry Truman, to Jeff.
What he's referring to about censorship of a censorship hearing, the Democrats on the committee voted that he shouldn't be allowed to testify. The Republicans voted that he should, and by one vote, Chairman Jordan ruled that he could testify. And that letter that he's talking about is basically a letter condemning him for being maybe a racist and all sorts of things. I don't think I ever in my wildest dreams would have thought that a Kennedy wouldn't be allowed to testify, but would be allowed to testify because the Republicans voted in his favor. And now he's trying to clarify, you know, he's been portrayed as an anti-vaxxer. You know, except for this vaccination that I didn't take, he's taken most of the vaccinations. He also took a flu shot every year. So I don't see how this guy is I mean, I have a feeling because I, you know, never examined this. He's suffering the same fate for the same fate for the same reason, but the opposite end of the spectrum. The opposite end of the spectrum. They are basically just defaming him and lying about him and creating the image they want to create so he can't be effective, which is that he's a crazy vaxxer. There's nothing crazy about him at all. Would you please read his book so you can make up that? That's really what changed my mind about this guy. I read the book and I said, a really serious guy. He did a hell of a lot of work on this book. He backed it up. I'm not sure he's completely right, but I sure know he's not completely wrong. And at least I can go back to the sources and judge it myself, because even the thing they're accusing him of about being anti-Semitic, which is about the impact of the disease, comes from a report. And these bums write this letter. It reminds me of the 51 intelligence people who wrote basically that I was a Russian agent. Never consulted me, never even looked at the hard drive. Turns out they were lying through their teeth. They're still going around making a fortune like they're intelligence experts. It's also, by the way, the same group of idiots who have been giving presidents bad information for 20 years. This is the group that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Thank you. These are the Benghazi people. Thank you. These are the people that told Obama that ISIS was the JV. And the damn thing was worse when Obama left office than when he came in, because he ignored them. And Trump had to win that, which he did. So but he has more of them. He's got 100. I only had 51, bunch of bums, mostly former CIA people and a few people that used to be, I thought, honorable men. And if you watch the way in which they signed that, even if you agree with their position, they had no idea if that had hallmarks of Russian disinformation. They never even looked at it. And they signed it in a day or two. Some of them even admitted they never read the letter. They just knew it would help Biden. And then Biden used it in the debate to accuse Trump, his opponent, and me personally, twice, mispronouncing my name. Well, once getting it right, once getting it wrong. Basically, the thrust being, I was doing it at the behest of the Russian government, which is a damnable lie, for which there's been no reaction at all by the press, by anyone else, to the damage it did to my reputation. And now these lawsuits, which are just completely ridiculous. I had a basis for everything I did. You might not agree with it, but I had a basis for it.
Well, Mayor,
you want to hear a little more of Kennedy? I don't mind hearing a little more. People can get off if they want. We're not forcing them.
Letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. This 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. The charges in this, and by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party. It was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, to Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson, as the chairman referred to. It is the basis for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk, and the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
He goes on to, give great examples of what free speech means to this country and the unbelievable damage the Biden administration has done to it, and the personal damage they're doing to him, even with family members of his coming out against him, because their loyalty to their party is greater to their loyalty to their family, and I'm sorry, to their country. Because if you don't realize that you are perpetuating a fraud on the United States with Biden, then you shouldn't be in American public life. Let's step aside from the corruption allegations and just take a look at what a damn fool he is and how he's in the latter stages of dementia. And you want to give us that kind of president? That's only because you want to keep power. Well, in any event, we'll go into a little more detail tomorrow night when we get a chance to organize it just right, get it down to.
Well, yeah, we'll have more on RFK's. Look, it's been such a busy news week with everything going on, but I know you were very
I found that to be
quite
one of the better, maybe one of the really best contributions in this political season. I thought Trump's speech about 3 weeks ago, when he pointed out what he was going to do with the economy, was one of the very, very best. Much more substantive than his opponents, who can't be substantive. I mean,
that's another topic. That's another topic you wanted to.
Christie is an attack dog, and really an attack. He doesn't. All he ever does is talk about how terrible Trump is.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with DeSantis, but he's a terrible candidate. And then jumping on Trump the other day was inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. I mean, as a Republican, if you don't realize that this guy is being persecuted because he's a Republican and he scares the hell out of the deep state, you're never going to do anything about the deep state. You can stand with him on that and say you want to be president because you're better at. You don't do as many nasty tweets. Although I don't think. I just don't think DeSantis is in that category because he's such a disloyal guy. I can't imagine running against a guy who made me governor, unless he really believes the future of the republic is at stake. And believe me, he's not that good. That the future of the republic rests on a guy who barely won the first time. So
maybe, and I guess we have videos. Do we save that for tomorrow as well, Mayor?
Yeah, I think the most memorable descriptions of this campaign have been some of the very detailed outlines that Trump gives of what he is going to do, somewhat based on what he's done, and then variations of that. I think Ramaswamy has given really excellent description of the economy, and also has been a warrior on freedom from an intrusive government. I think most of the rest of the rhetoric has been undistinguished. And I think Robert Kennedy several times has hit, right, whether you agree with him or not, has really described, very similar to Trump, what we face in terms of the deprivation of our rights and our liberties. In fact, the others don't talk about that much, which I think the Republican opponents of Trump never really talk about the deprivation of our rights and liberties and what they're going to do about it. And I'm starting to get the feeling that DeSantis is a candidate of the establishment, of the swamp. The Republican version of it, but it can be just as bad. Somebody's got to come in like Trump, like Kennedy, with the fire in the belly that this has got to all be changed. No little makeover and make nice with everybody. It's got to be all changed. We can't have a country where we persecute one group of people and let other people get away with stealing hundreds of millions and sell out our country. Well, I think we've covered a good deal tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 8. I'll be on at 3 on WABCradio.com. Go to Twitter, if you would, and sign up and subscribe, and also on RudyGiulianiCS.com, where our podcasts are. And we'll have one out tomorrow, a new one, and there's a very good one on right now. And again, we'll be back with you tomorrow night. You know, it's really incredible. There is so much to cover and so little time to do it, but we do our best, and so do you. Thank you, and let's remain together. We can take our country back and have it flourish again. Someone said to me, in addition to saying, make America great again, we should say, make America America again. I think that expresses the feeling as well. God bless you, and God bless America. Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it.